Hi everyone, you're listening to the Vialucci podcast, uncensored and completely unedited discussions about life and everything in it. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello, 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 hello. Hello, Charles.
Hi.
And hello, John.
Hello, Theo.
resident
Hello, Charles.
Movie
Hello.
critic. Before we,
Hi, John.
So we're going to talk
Hi,
about
Theo.
James Bond, aren't we?
Yes.
But as I just walked out the door there I can't remember what I had to go and do. I heard you mention Avatar.
Yeah.
So what was this an exclusive? Had you seen
it's
it?
hot
not
off the press.
No, I'm not going to
you
say
can't.
anything else.
Okay.
I can't say anything else.
Oh,
yet,
why
so-
can't you? What is it?
Embargo.
Embargoes,
Sorry.
yeah.
But what is it? What's the thing? What are you doing? What are you part of?
I went to a thing the other night, previous screening, so it's all right. So let's not talk about that.
Yeah, not
But
that
why could you not? talk about it?
There's an embargo. I can't say anything.
But that's what I mean. What's the body? Are you working for a group or?
It's a general press embargo.
Oh, okay.
So I can't say anything
What are they holding off for? Or-
because it doesn't open until the 16th, and they're not releasing any. They're not allowed to publish anything until like
A certain date.
Yeah. So that
okay.
it's a legal embargo, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Why not just wait then till it's? Oh, they want to get the reviews first.
Because they want to get the reviews ready, so they're
Right,
all ready
okay.
to rock and roll.
Because normally, as you know, I do a lot of reviews. So what will happen is when I do a review, the PR people send me a thing saying there's an embargo on this date.
Oh, right, okay.
Now, normally that's the week of release. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, because it is Avatar and because I don't want to reveal anything, and in some ways, I don't want to say anything anyway because I want people to discover it for self. So, sorry about that, guys.
No, 100%.
What cinema did you see it in at least?
In the Odeon, in Central
Leicester
London.
Square.
Yeah, 3
How much are they charging for a ticket nowadays?
Well, I went to see Death on the Nile the other a while back, and it was 31 quid.
Oh, dear. What? When did you go?
I said, well,
So that's three tickets.
This is the funny thing. People were talking to me they said to me, why didn't you get bloody Limitless or something like that? I said, no, look,
right.
I wanted to see it in 70mm.
Right.
And I thought, look, and you know, foolishly now when I look back, I thought 31 quid. I thought, but that was the price of a ticket at the Odeon Leicester Square. I mean,
So
it
it's
was
a theatre
5 quid
ticket.
in 89. I mean, what's going on?
I remember going to see Terminator Salvation, I think, in Leicester Square.
Oh, yeah,
long time ago.
Yeah.
And that was about it was about 18 quid or something like that.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh
my God,
mental.
yeah.
That was about 10 years ago.
That's a
like
week's
12 years ago.
wage.
And I'm like, what the hell, man?
Well, I think that, you know, with cinemas now, we've Cineworld have got their gift card and the Odeon got Limitless, so you can watch as many films you like. Unfortunately, I'm sort of, I don't care. I'll pay the money to see the bloody movie.
I have to say, I went to see, we will get on to James Bond, by the way, guys and girls.
I think people know by now.
It takes, they have to skip the first 5 minutes, basically. No, we also have a timestamp, to be honest. The actual episode starts here. But I went to see the Top Gun, the new Top Gun, and that was in Reading, and that was about 15 quid.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a big jump.
That's what I mean. Like, so you just go a couple miles down the road, and it's double. So anyway,
Okay, right.
James
Jamie
Bond.
Okay, so what has led me to do this as our podcast today? Well, the funny thing is we're talking anniversaries because it's the 60th anniversary of Bond bowing on the big screen. And here's the thing, it is the 40th anniversary of the debut on ITV, Boxing Day, 1982, of Moonraker.
Was that the first James Bond film on TV?
That was not the first James Bond film on TV. The first James Bond film was, in fact, the very first James Bond, which was Dr. No, and that was in 1975.
Okay.
Just looking at some of the actual bits of trivia.
Oh, you got your laptop with you?
No, I've got my bone. So here's a question for you guys. What do you reckon are the most watched James Bond films on TV? Who holds the record
on
for,
TV?
You know, when a Bond film premiered on UK TV, what was the biggest audience?
The audience, who were
The audience. So when people sat down and watched the thing on Saturday or Sunday, whatever the date it was, how many? You know, I'll give you 10 bonus points if you can kind of guess what the Bond movie is, and also the amount of people who watch it in millions.
It's got to be No or Gun, isn't it? It was one of the.
It'll be something earlier because viewing figures are always higher because there were less channels. Basically.
Yes.
So these records of highest viewing figures are always like from the same.
And what I'll also do is I'll say which James Bond actually is the most watched on TV at the premiere.
Right, we haven't got any answers to any of them. So
It'd probably be Roger Moore, I suspect.
Okay, well, you're right in one case, but what I want you to do is to sort of, if you can sort of pinpoint which Roger Moore Bond actually was the most watched, the biggest actual most watched Bond film of all time.
the one with the crocodiles or the laser going up his jaffers.
I was gonna take a punt. It'll be something weird. I'm gonna say Live and Let Die because I quite like that.
You are right.
Oh,
so basically, on the 20th of January 1980, Live and Let Die was watched by half the audience, which was 23 million.
Who was the Bond in that one? The actor?
Roger Moore.
Oh,
baddies,
okay.
Yaphet Kotto was Kananga. It was kind of at the time when Shaft and stuff was big, so it was always Mr. Big, and so Pam Grier, Richard Roundtree. Here's another go, right? What was the second most watched Bond film? You've kind of answered the question already, but what you have to kind of think along the same lines. What would you say is the next most watched Bond?
I'm gonna Octopussy. I don't know.
No. You're actually it is a Roger Moore. It's The Spy Who Loved Me, on the 28th of March, 82, which I do remember because around Easter, it was watched by 22.9 million. Okay, so the reason I'm doing this is also because it was announced, although this is not confirmed, that they have made somebody has actually gauged that actually they know who the new James Bond is.
Who said it and who's it going to be?
Well, there's a newspaper report I done recently, which apparently, don't quote me on this, it's Aaron Taylor Johnson.
And why would we know him?
He's from Kick-Ass 1 and 2 and also Bullet Train.
Oh, is he Kick-Ass in?
He's the guy he's like the flawed character, and he's the one who sort of goes, who sort of has a thing with Chloe Grace Moretz. He's the bit of the flawed character. But he's in Bullet Train, which is the Brad Pitt film, which is on a train, which is completely looping, incredibly funny. It's basically people on a train looking after a case, but it's wonderful. It's a wonderful action. So he's got the chops to be a good action thing. I mean, I was going on Henry Cavill. Because I think this is the thing. In a job description, I think if you're going to be a Bond, you have to have some kind of physical action. But that said, Daniel Craig was an actor. He wasn't a physical actor. I mean, he trained up. I don't know if you saw the post No Time to Die documentary Being James Bond, which was the Daniel Craig thing. If you search Being James Bond on YouTube, it's a 50-minute documentary with Barbara Broccoli, Michael G. Wilson, and Daniel Craig talking about it. Anyway, we've got to move on.
It's always out of left field, I have to say.
Yeah.
Like the selections, every time they announce a new Bond, it's always people go, really, him?
But when David Craig, what's his name?
Daniel Craig.
When Daniel Craig was going to be a Bond, did people know before? Did they get it right beforehand?
Well, the thing is Eon is actually very smart in what their choices. They do go for it because, as they said in this documentary, Daniel Craig had actually been sort of been looked up in terms of his work in things like Enduring Love. And actually, Barbara Broccoli is quoted in this documentary saying, well, every time you watch Daniel Craig, you couldn't take his eyes off him. And apparently it was based partly on the fact that the way that he walked down a long hallway in Elizabeth. There's a scene where he has a swagger. Yeah. So that was the thing. Anyway, so
do they interview them about how can you do this with your cuffs?
I don't know.
Prince Charles.
But what it is they do. How the screen test works is I think you do about 6 screen tests, right. And the real test is they do the scene between Bond and Tatiana Ramanova from Russia with Love, where she arrives, she's on the bed. Now, famously, James Brolin, who was in Capricorn 1 and the Amityville Horror, he actually tried out when Roger Moore was, they were rumored that they weren't going to have Roger Moore again after For Your Eyes Only. There's a famous audition with James Brolin going in there. The funny thing is, people like Burt Reynolds and Clint Eastwood were American actors. And even Clint Eastwood turned it down because you've got to have an English actor. And Burt Reynolds famously turned it down, and he regressed it. Yeah. So it said.
Do we know in previous films who actually auditioned, who they auditioned, or do you not hear about it?
You do, but then there's a lot of politics with it. Sometimes they have to give people a nod.
Yeah, because you wouldn't want to know. I didn't get it.
Sometimes the agent will come and say, "Right, I've got these guys I want," and then they kind of.
But it's also as well that when you look at the history of auditions, for example, Pierce Brosnan was originally scheduled to play Bond after Roger Moore, but what happened was he was in Remington Steele, and then because of the publicity around Brosnan getting the role in Bond, Remington Steele extended his contract.
Yeah.
But then, of course, 9 years later, he then became Bond. About 8 years later, he was announced as Bond. And I think it was a good choice. With Timothy Dalton, he actually turned down the role originally because he was too young. So he kind of turned it down because he was back after when Sean Connery said goodbye, he was going to do it, but he said he was too young. So, but then he matured into it, and that was it. And then Roger Moore, basically, because George Lazenby was a bit of an arsehole on the set of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, he actually turned down a contract, and then Roger Moore, they decided to go with Roger Moore. Okay, so let's get on with so how we're going to work. There's going to be I'm going to give you some favorite things. So what I'm going through is the best Bond film, best pre-credits, best girls, best villains, best songs, best gadgets.
Yeah, we've got an hour, John.
No.
I hope it's the top two or top three.
Best lines. No,
through them.
But I'm going to go through it, and I'll also talk, if we have time, about who's the most successful financially.
Right, go.
Okay, so my top 5. At number 5, it is Casino Royale 2005.
As the best.
As number 5 in my list. Okay, so again, the reason I say 2005 because there's a 1967 spoof version, Casino Royale. This is probably one of the most faithful Bond adaptations ever, which has been updated and cleverly done because it takes the essence of the novel and includes pretty much the torture scene and the famous line, "The bitch is dead" at the end. And it's sort of a clever update of what Bond is. And I think it's a near perfect introduction for a new Bond. I think the way that Daniel Craig handled it, I'd read the Bond novels and I got a sense that I knew where the Ian were coming from because a lot of people haven't read the novels. They've only seen the films. And the essence of Fleming is actually wonderfully portrayed in this film. It's a flawed Bond, but it also has spectacle. It has some of the best sequences. I mean, the free running chase at the beginning and that airport sequence is phenomenal. You know, my favorite bit in that is when the plane's coming down to land and the trucks are about to go, the essence. And then you think, is that going to happen? And then, there's a sense of dynamic between Daniel Craig and Ava Green. It's got a really sleazy villain in Le Chiffre,
very memorable
term, who kind of has a thing for, like Javier Bardem in Skyfall. They have a bit of a sort of homoerotic romance.
I don't know whether he wants to kill him or cuddle him. Yeah. Maybe a bit of both.
Okay, so I think for me that to me is a really great one.
It really sort of, I think at the time it felt very different and very sort of revolutionary, very modernizing, and it felt. Yeah, I think it sort of stands out in the sort of pantheon as trying to do something a bit different with the formula as well.
But it's a very smart one because I think also when they take the series in a new direction, it's really good. So next one, License to Kill is my 4th. And the reason is because I think it's actually a forerunner of the Craig Bonds. It's a much tougher one. It set the tone. It was not well received in 89 because Bond, as you know, had been kind of family friendly and cuddly. Then you have this rather darker version of Bond, which in fact is actually closer in spirit to the Fleming novels because he's a bit of a bastard. He's known it, and the kind of the darkness of Sanchez and the drug thing and the fact that it's a revenge trip. He's not actually in the Secret Service. He's actually given up. He has to turn over his weapon. It's also, really good one. I mean, there's some really great stunts in it. I think the whole kind of thing where it's more about, the Florida Keys and the drug barons. And I think that's what the series needed. It didn't need a megalomaniac, which is what it's been for. Cause it's, people seem to misunderstand what a Bond film is, he gets a mission at the beginning. He goes out, he fucks a couple of girls, and then he saves the world.
And it's always sort of a world level threat. You know what I mean? And it's nice. I think there's smaller sort of stories where he's
like Hit Squad.
Well, where he's just trying to mess with a cartel, a drug cartel. I think that's interesting.
Yeah. And also what's like about it is the fact that M's in the field. He's actually sort of giving him the suitcase with the, if he goes, we got everything for a person on holiday, and he's actually out there in the bushes. Number 3 is On Her Majesty's Secret Service. the George Lazenby one from 1969. Now, this is a controversial one. A lot of people will probably think, well, actually, why have you picked George Lazenby as a single one? Because it's first of all, it's probably the most faithful of all the Bond films that has been adapted from a Bond novel, because it retains virtually the essence of what it is. And also as well, it's I think Lazenby's very good as Bond. I think it's a shame that he didn't really pursue it, because I think I would have loved to have seen him do 2 or 3 more. It also has a fantastic score. It's one of the few that actually doesn't have a title song. Because the funny thing is we think of We Have All the Time in the World by Louis Armstrong, but also which became a number 1 because of a Guinness ad. But it's an instrumental. Oh. The theme is an instrumental. And it's got some great, the Piz Gloria sequence, and it's got a great Blofeld in Telly Savalas, who actually matches him physically all the way through. And it's quite a tragic one as well. I mean, it's one of those like The Great Escape, when Nigel Stock comes out of the hole and you think, is he going to sort of, you will for him not to make a sound, and then he does, or Steve McQueen leaves it. Again, at the very end of On Majesty's Secret Service is kind of a, it is quite an emotional thing, but it's actually...
It ends on a real downer, doesn't it? That's the thing,
but that's the essence of the book. The very thing is the essence of that book is there. So that is my number 3. So my number 2 is The Spy Who Loved Me, which effectively is a remake of You Only Live Twice. The reason it being is that The Spy Who Loved Me is not a book, is a very odd book in the Fleming bibliography. Bond is a secondary character. It's basically about a woman who's on the Canadian border, escaping some gangsters, and Bond turns up to save her.
Okay.
So it's a very odd book. So the story goes, Fleming he said to the producers, you can have the title, but don't shoot the book. But that said, it could make an interesting book. It could make an interesting adaptation. If they sort of rework the elements, it might be a nice one, to the Canadian Mounties, Bond with the Mounties and stuff.
Again, a smaller story.
Yeah. But they basically rewrote You Only Live Twice. So instead of like spacecraft, it was submarines, and it's American Russia. But of course, it was the debut of the 007 stage. It's got the famous car, which we'll talk about later. And we'll talk about the theme as well, the Marvin Hamlish. But for me, I think it defines the globe-trotting essence of what Bond is. He's in Sardinia, he's in Egypt, he goes, he's...
It's very Bond.
Yeah.
It's possibly as one of the most Bond movies. Yeah. When you think of all those archetypes and all those things, that's what you're thinking of, really.
Yeah, and it's, and also there's a very interesting, subplot of a revenge story because basically Bond kills the lover of the Russian agent. In the opening credit sequence, he kills Sergei Bazov, who's Anya Almasova's lover. And of course, Bond and Anya sort of fall in love. And then, of course, she says, when this mission is over, I will kill you. I'll also talk about some of the lines later on. So we're going to talk. And so, of course, number 1, what do you think my number 1 is?
Gun.
Sean Connery one, possibly.
Okay. Yeah.
You haven't mentioned old.
Yeah.
Sean.
Okay. So what out of the Sean ones? What do you reckon that one is?
From Russian with Love?
No.
Oh, really? Dr. No?
No.
Really? Okay. Goldfinger?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I kind of, the reason is I think they're all, Connery's movies are well done anyway. I think Diamonds Are Forever is the weakest, because I think the chase in Las Vegas is the high, and I think the climax on an oil rig is not. I think that's kind of a bit kind of same old. But with Goldfinger, it's the kind of set the template for the visuals and the action. I think the cars, the gadgets, the girls, I love the Aston Martin and the ejector seat.
I was going to say it's the one with the ejector seat. Yeah.
It's got a great, and also it's got a really, Auric Goldfinger and Oddjob is that, that they're like for me, they are these kind of the archetypal thing. Oddjob is like Harold Sakata, who's this former wrestler. He really does genuinely look like he's going to tear Goldfinger in two. And, it's got a great score and, the woman with gold paint on the bed. I mean, I could go on forever and stuff like that. But it's amazing that they recreated Fort Knox in the Buckinghamshire countryside. Because it was actually all the stuff in Bond. It was not shot in America.
Oh, right.
It was actually, they shot it, like with Superman 2, they actually did the same thing again. So, you remember in Superman 2 where the 3 villains hit that American small town?
Yeah.
That was recreated on Pinewood.
No, really?
Yeah, and you know when Roger Moore in the plane at the beginning of Octopussy arrives at a gas station, that was actually done in Pinewood. It's amazing because 007 magazine is actually done from they do these special in the 007 magazine. They always talk about where they shot something. So aside from some shots in where they drive along American highways, pretty much the Ulrich Goldfinger's residence and the Fort Knox were actually created in the Buckinghamshire countryside.
Has he ever not driven an Aston Martin, or have they kept it? Even like the recent ones.
Well, they did a great homage in Skyfall when Daniel Craig and Judi Dench drove back up to Scotland. They actually they sort of drove one car and then they went into a garage and then the Aston Martin from Goldfinger turned up.
Oh right.
So that's my top 5. So we're going to move on to pre-credit sequences.
Right, you're going to lose me on these.
So basically, the pre-credit sequence.
I can basically only see a parachute with Britain. I can't think of any other.
So the main title sequences were pioneered by Maurice Binder, who basically did these intro things with these girls in silhouette, and it was done to a song. He told a very funny story. He did an NFT interview where, when he was doing For Your Eyes Only, Sheena Easton misinterpreted what a Bond song should be. So she watched the pre-credit sequence where Blofeld was shoved down a chimney, and he said, "Put me down." And basically, Sheena Easton thought that title of the song should be "Put Me Down," and then he said to her, "No, it's For Your Eyes Only." So For Your Eyes Only, or Thunderball, or this.
Those choir lessons have come in a handy.
But so my top five pre-credit sequences: GoldenEye, which is a wonderful rendition of Gold and the Russian things. The actual, the hammers and stuff, the hammer and sickle. It's a really nice golden one with the gun barrel, and then it sort of sets up the. I think anyway, Tina Turner did the song for that one.
So it was a episode with Sean Bean, yeah?
Yeah, that was the one where he played Alex Trevelyan, 006, and he sort of went off, stuff like that. Number 4 is The Living Daylights. Aha, but a really nice little atmospheric one from 1987.
How did that one go, John?
The Living Daylights.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't know it's Aha, though. Okay.
Hey, driver, where we're going.
They get some
I
big
swear
people.
my nerves are showing. And number 3, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is a really nice one because that actually turns the clock back and they do a montage of images from the previous Bonds, from Dr. No to You Only Live Twice.
Okay.
And number 2 is Casino Royale, which is all the jacks and the card players and stuff, which sets up that. But it's interesting because the pre-credit sequence, which is in black and white, where he earns his 00 status. But the difference is it actually kicks off goes from black and white into color and actually shows the gun barrel in red, goes in that. So that's really good. And then my number 1 is Spy Love Me, which is that's actually I'm talking pre-credits, not I'm talking not the montage, but the pre-credit. So GoldenEye is the leap from the dam.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Living Daylights is actually the drive along the long narrow road in Gibraltar.
Okay.
On Her Majesty's Secret Service is the fight on the beach. Casino Royale is the black and white montage where he offers 2 things. And then Spy Love Me is so it's the Rick Sylvester leap off Baffin Island where he leaps off the thing and the parachute opens in there anyway.
Yeah, so that's the very, very, very famous
so that was it anyway. So we're on to girls now. My top 5 Bond girls.
Okay.
Keep your finger on that edit button.
Okay, chaps, let's tread carefully here.
John, it's 2022.
Yeah, okay.
23.
Okay, so
The lovely ladies.
So the lovely ladies. So okay.
Although, to be honest, girls was more apt at the time.
Well, it's Bond girls. I mean, what do you want, guys? Come on, okay. So at number 5, it is Jill St. John, Tiffany Case in Diamonds Are Forever. So she's the one with the diamonds in Amsterdam, and they scarf, so that stuff like that. So
are you rating them on the characters? Not just it's like a beauty pageant.
I'm rating them because I think they are, for me, they are
most interesting.
They're interesting to me.
These are the strongest characters.
Yeah, the strong character.
The most interesting.
The best actresses.
Yeah, but they're all good anyway.
Yeah.
So at number 4, Diana Rigg, Tracy DiVincenzo from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, who I think was really majestic and elegant. A bit of a sport brat, but then sort of found love with Bond, but sadly it was not to be because she was doing it anyway. Number 3, Ava Green, Vesta Lind, Casino Royale.
Okay.
She actually is really there's a nice dynamic between her and Bond, and I love the sequence in the train where they're sort of weighing each other up, and they're talking about, well, what do I know about, what do you observe from me, what do I surmise, and they talk about this kind of barren thing about beauty, and as much as I am, as much as charming as you are, I'm going to keep my eye on our money and off your perfectly formed arse. And he says, you noticed and stuff. Number 2 is Hannah Blackman, Pussy Galore, Goldfinger.
Yes, yeah, she's
but she's
very talented.
Well, I was going to say she's one of these people who didn't do enough, because she's great. Like whenever she does turn up and stuff, I'm always like, oh, she's great. Why didn't she do more? Because she's really great.
But she does match it. I mean, the fact is, when Bond is actually on the plane, when she's on the plane, it sort of has that, goes into focus, and he goes, I'm Pussy Galore, and Sean Connery goes, I must be dreaming. Now, what do you think my number 1 Bond girl is?
Well, who's the one that got painted in gold? Oh, Golden Gun.
Oh, what's her name? Dr. No from Dr.
No,
No.
that was Jill Masterson.
I'd give her that just for the effort.
Shirley, that was Shirley Eaton, but she is not my favourite Bond girl.
Okay. Pray do tell.
Well, I'm actually going for Claudine Auger, who was Domino Duval in Thunderball. Simply because she's incredibly gorgeous. I mean, she looks really, she's nice. I mean, I think she's very beautiful. So because she's, a beautiful French lady, and yes,
very talented.
Yes,
and a good, strong character.
Yeah, good. But so that's my top 5 girls.
Talented.
Cool. We're off those eggshells
top
now.
5 women.
Yeah, you can relax.
So
now.
we're going to go on to villains.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Has there been a Bond female villain yet?
Yeah, there was Sophie Marceau, who played Electra King in The World Is Not Enough.
What years was
1999.
Oh, okay.
She's the one that basically she basically sort of caused the assassination of her own father, and then wanted to sort of basically create an explosion to sort of transfer all the oil from her pipeline.
Oh, okay.
Because they had like an Eastern European pipeline.
Yeah.
Sorry, what's that? That was as a main character, Sean Bean, but
she's a henchwoman.
Famke Janssen was Xenia Onatopp, who is actually a very good henchman. But she's, when she tries to crush, crushing guys with their legs and stuff.
If you got to go, if you got to go some way, you know.
Yeah. So here are my top 5 villains. So at number 5, Max Zorin, Christopher Walken in A View to a Kill.
I think a large part of that is mostly because of Christopher Walken, because he's just great.
Yeah.
But that said, I think he's actually a terrific match for Bond, because he, although I have mixed feelings about the actual film itself, I think he's a really terrific Bond villain. And I think the fact that he sort of doesn't waste any time. I mean, the bit in the airship where he goes, of course we have to continue our scene in privacy. And he gets this Japanese businessman goes out, and then Grace Jones pulls it on. He slides out and ends up falling out the top. And he goes, "Does anybody else want to drop out?" So that's
the one, Grace Jones as well.
Yeah.
And with Dolph Lundgren in a brief cameo.
No,
he is in there.
Really?
Yeah, he's in. There's a scene where Grace Jones raises a thing, and actually raises one of the General Gogol's men.
Yeah,
and actually you can see Dolph Lundgren in the background. And of course, Grace Jones and Dolph Lundgren had a fling.
Oh, okay. Right.
Okay. So number 4 is Telly Savalas, Ernst Stavro Blofeld in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which I think is a really terrific, his kind of, he's more, again, like Zorin, he's a match for James Bond. I mean, the way that he talks about, using these girls in Piz Gloria to... Piz Gloria to sort of spread some virus throughout the world. So Joanna Lumley's part of it. Catherine Schell, who was in Space 1999. Jenny Hanley, who went on to be in Magpie. She's one of the girls in that one. Okay. But the fact that it's right up to the very end when they have the wonderful where Lazenby is being chased by them by skiing. Here's a bit of trivia for you. Sean Connery never skied in a Bond movie.
You mean it was all stunts?
No. What I'm saying to you is, if you think about it, everybody else. When you look at it, Roger Moore skied and George Lazenby skied and Roger Moore skied, but Connery never skied in any of the films. If he'd done On Her Majesty's Secret Service as his last one rather than Diamonds Are Forever, that would have been actually the accumulation.
He was too busy going hot places. I just think I'd never see him in the snow. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. No.
But but Blofeld, I think he's a very smooth villain. I mean, Telly Savalas is fantastic. The way that he sort of goes, he sort of coordinates everything, and he sort of causes Bond to get afraid at one point when they're in the little village down below. Bond is actually scared, and then he's rescued by Tracy, and they go off in their car and do that wonderful stock car sequence and stuff. So that's my number 4. Number 3 is Franz Sanchez, Robert Davi in License to Kill. I think he's a wonderful villain because, again, he doesn't pull any punches, and you genuinely think he could actually kill Bond, but he's also a very ruthless villain. I mean, right at the very beginning when he says to Talisa Soda, he goes, "What did he promise you? His heart? Give his heart." And then Benicio del Toro gets the thing out, and then he whacks him with the iguana, the tail of the iguana. Poor Talisa Soho. And number 2, well, we can't go with a list of villains without mentioning Jaws.
Yes.
Richard Gere, who actually turned up in 2 Bond movies, Spy Love Me and then in Moonraker, but he's such a lovable character. I mean, I think the first time when he's with Stromberg on Atlantis, and he says, "Anybody who comes into contact with that microphone is to be limited," and then it goes up to a close-up of the opens like that. But he also has some fun moments. Although that said, I wasn't quite convinced by the love story between him and the woman on the spacecraft, where when they're on that cable car and he goes through and there's a moment of love like that.
He had a quick heel turn, didn't he?
Yeah.
He went from villain to hero.
But that said, I think also as well the way, I mean, that sequence on the train where he's actually fighting Bond in the carriage. So that's my number 2. What do you think my number 1 is?
We've already had a Blofeld.
Is it obscure or is it an obvious one?
It's an early one.
An early one. I don't know.
Go on. What is it?
It is Odd Job and Goldfinger. Tied for number 1. Because I think Goldfinger is incredibly, Ulrich Goldfinger, I think he's fantastic. But I think Harold Sakata is Odd Job. The fact that he's silent and he's ruthless in killing people. I mean, when he, at the climax of in Fort Knox, he's, there's a guard with a key. And he goes, "We got to stop the bomb." He just throws him off the top of the thing there.
Has he got any lines?
He doesn't. He just goes, there's one, in the golf game, he goes, and like he sort of sees the ball, he goes, "Aha." I think that's his only line of dialogue.
What did he go on to do?
He didn't do anything. I think he was a bodyguard, and then he passed away some years ago. Okay, so we're going to talk about songs. So here are my top 5 songs.
Okay.
So,
go on, go for it.
Okay, so at number 5, we're going to go for Duran Duran, A View to a Kill.
Yeah.
Which I think is the best of the modern, which is actually one of the best of the Bond songs ever. I think it's a great 80s song, and it encompasses Duran Duran, but it encompasses the Bond theme anyway. So that's my number 5. Number 4, Live and Let Die, Paul McCartney and Wings.
Okay, I would have had that higher because I think that actually that song kind of slaps. Like it's actually that's actually.
How did that one go? What was that?
Live and let die.
Oh yeah.
What does it matter to you?
That's like
You got a job to do. You gotta do it well. You gotta
legit
give the
good
other
song.
fella hell. And number 3, Goldfinger, because again, I think that to me is Goldfinger. He's the man with the Midas touch, the Midas touch. It's because I love the lines in it where it says, golden words he will pour in your ear, but his life cannot disguise what you fear. When a golden girl knows when he's kissed him, it's the kiss of death. I think also the actual orchestration of it's really good anyway. And number 2, You Only Live Twice, Nancy Sinatra, which again is a wonderful, very atmospheric thing, and I like it, the way that it's fused with the images. It really is.
And that one go?
You only live twice.
Oh yeah,
Sort of had a slight Oriental.
Yeah.
So it seems.
Sort of.
One in your life and one for your dreams. And so, what do you think my number 1 is?
I don't know because I would have gone.
What's the Shirley one? Shirley, what's her name?
Shirley Bassey.
Shirley Bassey.
Well, she did like I've already done one of those with Goldfinger, but she did like Diamonds Are Forever and Moonraker. But she is not my number 1 song. So
who is it?
It is Nobody Does It Better by Carly Simon, The Spy Love Me.
Okay.
The reason I picked it is simply because the lyrics are really encompass what it is. So nobody does it better. Baby, you're the best. Nobody does it half as good as you. So that's the one that I've picked as thing. I would say, that said, I agree with you. Live and Let Die probably would have placed her, but if it wasn't for Nobody Does It Better.
That's a better representation of the character as well. Is that because some of them are interesting, because some of them are very much about the plot and the film that they're talking about, but then they're also kind of good songs on their own, like Goldfinger and stuff is kind of, when you listen to the lyrics, that is very much talking about the film and it's describing the film, but actually it's kind of a cool song as well,
Well, here's the thing. I was at the London Action Festival in July, and David Arnold performed 2 live script performances he actually did an acoustic version of You Know My Name from Casino Royale. So it was just him singing. But he said, actually, the thing about it is all the songs that the Bond songs are done from a female perspective. And David Arnold said that actually they haven't had a song about Bond done from the Bond perspective. So when you listen to the lyrics, You Know My Name, this cuts from my brain, she goes, you're just next in line. If you listen to I've been watching the actual lyrics quite closely. It goes, I've seen diamonds cut from blinding heights. And you yourself aren't so divine. You're just next in line. Arm yourself because nobody here will save you. They will replace you. And the lyrics actually talk about the fact that he's dismissing the character, because that's the thing about it. Bond can only be, he can only go from relationship to relationship. So those are my top 5 songs, and we're going to talk about gadgets and cars now. So this is my top 5. So at number 5, I'm going to go for the safe cracker case from On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
The safe cracker case.
So what it is essentially what it is Bond's been suspended from duty, and he's determined to find out about Blofeld. And in a nutshell,
suspended for being too awesome.
So he goes to a solicitor in Switzerland called Gumboldt. And he basically sort of goes into the office and he's looking for documents, which apparently are applications by Blofeld to prove his title. He's doing it. So what it is, he has a henchman. He gets like there's a building site over the road. So he puts this case into the those drums that when they're sort of putting things. When they're sort of I don't know, it's like oil or something.
A barrel.
So there's a barrel. And basically the barrel comes around and he's got an hour to get it. So he gets this case, puts it in, puts it up to the safe ring, and it actually sort of calculates the actual combination and opens it up. Right. And then basically he sort of does, and it also is a photocopier. So he can, so what it is he sort of, he photocopies the documents, puts them back in the safe, then sort of pans it out into barrel, puts it down there, and walks out casually with the Playboy. So it's actually, it's a really cool thing anyway. So that's that one. And number 4, I've changed the order around, but but you'll understand why in a minute. So number 4, I'm going for the keyring in the Living Daylights. So there's a keyring which M gives him, which basically he does. There's 2 things that it does, but I like it because he does the first few bars of Rule Britannia, and that creates a gas that stuns everybody for 30 seconds. The second one is to create an explosion. Yeah. He actually does a wolf whistle, and that there's a little mini explosion in the actual keyring. Yeah. And it's used that's the wonderful thing about a Bond film is the actual, the way the actual, when you see M sort of talk about the demonstration of it, you're sort of seeing when is it going to be used, and then when it gets pulled out.
Set up and payoff.
Set off and payoff. So at number 3, I'm going to go for the dart gun in Moonraker. There's actually a wrist dart gun. So what it is it's activated by nerve impulses in the wrist muscle. So at the very beginning of the film, it's got like 5 armor-piercing heads, 5 things. And so basically he goes, it's activated by wrist muscle, and then it opens up, and then it ends up with like a dart in the arse of a horse on an image. And then M goes, well, thank you, 007. And then there's a very funny line where he goes, very novel Q, we should get him in the stores for Christmas. So that's my number 3. And number 2, I'm going to go for the suitcase the exploding suitcase in From Russia with Love.
Just an exploding suitcase.
It's what it is there's a gas canister. It's a gas canister. So what it is in the outset, like the usual thing. So M brings in this suitcase and he says, you've got to turn the catches a certain way. If you normally with a suitcase, you just flip the catches up, and that's how you open it. But if you open it like the catches explode, so what you have to do is turn it slightly, do like that. And then, of course, it's the actual thing they use in the very wonderful fight between Connery, and Robert Shaw in the climax. It's a wonderful explosive thing. And then that's a wonderful thing. I think it's a great, really great gift that they have. So that's my number 2. What do you think my number 1 is?
This is gadgets, is it?
This is I would say it extends to cars as well, but gadgets and cars.
Well, the Aston Martin possibly, if we're going to include cars, it's notable absence there because it is a gadget car. Let's say.
But that's what I was saying, because I was thinking, well, how do you define when you think of this is the thing about when you look at Bond, you think, well, actually, a car is a gadget. The way the cars go now.
It's introduced as well. Like, who comes along, goes, right, here's the car and here's the gadget. It's in the gadget section. Yeah. It's in the gadget department. So, yeah.
Well, the thing about this is my actual favourite gadget cum car is the Lotus Esprit from Spy Who Loved Me. Oh, yeah. So, here's the thing. We talk about the Aston Martin in Goldfinger. Now, I love the Aston Martin Goldfinger. I like the fact it's got the flip plates. I like the actual map where he goes, and Connery says, well, that would be a good one for a quick one on the way home. But the wonderful thing is when you look at like sat navs now, this is actually the first, it's ahead of its time. And, like the actual, the blade that actually cuts up the cars and stuff. But the ejector seat. But with the Lotus Esprit, the funny thing is the way it's introduced in the Spy Who Loved Me, the car. I mean, you think it's going to be in the showroom, and he's going to talk it through. But the funny thing is, it's not introduced like that. It actually is driven by M in Sardinia, and then Q goes, "Well, pay attention, 007. We've got some things to do in it." And, and he says, Q, have I ever let you down? So, of course, we go off and you don't know what this car's going to do. But once the car but you then realize it's in the chase and then subsequently in the ocean thing when it becomes a submarine. So it's a submersible. And I think that's the other thing as well. But I'm also going to give an honorable mention to my little friend, Little Nelly from You Only Live Twice. Okay. Which is the helicopter, which is this wonderful thing that actually sort of battles 4 helicopters, and it's got like rockets, it's got like aerial mines and stuff. So I think that's my honourable mention. Okay.
He assembles it. It's a little sort of kit-built helicopter, and he sort of sticks all these bits together. He's flying this. It's like a microlight kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk on famous lines. Here are my 5 favourite lines. So at number 5, I'm going for One from Diamonds Are Forever, and it's a wonderful thing where it's at the casino in the hotel. And anyway, in a nutshell, what it is Plenty O'Toole, Lana Ward, basically is a thing in well, there's a famous
PG movie.
But he goes, I'm Plenty O'Toole. He goes, I'm named after your father, I think.
Goes,
would you like some help? Would you like some help on the craps? But anyway, cut long story short, so he's won money on the crap tables, in a manner of speaking. Anyway, they go back to his hotel room. Anyway, they are confronted by all these gangsters in the room. So a gangster picks and he goes, I've got people in this town. And he throws her out the window. Anyway, Connery says, good shot. And then the gangster says, I didn't know there was a pool down there. And the funny thing is, it's such a wonderful line because you just think, and this is the wonderful thing about the whole thing anyway. So that's my number 5. My number 4 has got to be Hannah Blackman's introduction, where when the camera goes, he goes, I'm pussy galore. Something like that. So that's my number 1. And I'm actually for number 3, I'm going to go for Dr. No, which is, there's a wonderful sequence. There's an early car chase, and there's a hearse going along, and the hearse is being done, and Bond does it, and then the hearse goes down the cliffside and explodes. And then the guy who's saying, he goes, what's happened? He goes, I think they're on their way to a funeral. And then, and my number 2, spoiler alert, is the climax, is the line that's the very final line that Roger Moore utters at the end of The Spy Love Me, where Bond and Amasova they've escaped from Stromberg. All spoilers, but I'm going to say it. So they've got this little safety capsule from Atlantis, and they're in bed, and basically they're being picked up at the aircraft carrier. And you've got General Gogo and M, and they're going, M007. What are they doing? And then Bond just goes, keeping the British end up, sir. And then I think, what do you think my number 1 favorite line is?
I mean, you could just turn around and went, fuck off. So yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, so what do you think my favorite all-time line of a Bond film is?
Is it a death scene?
It is. Well, it's a near-death scene, and it's an early Bond. So I'm gonna give you a clue there.
Shocking.
Yeah, absolutely shocking.
It's in the same film, but it's later on in Goldfinger. Okay. But I mean,
something about he can fly feathers.
No, that's in Spy Love Me.
Right,
but this to me is this epitomized. This is probably the all-time great exchange in a Bond movie. And it's actually made the top number 1. It's the number 1 quote in a Bond movie, and it's actually been done by polls of Bond fans.
Go on then, what is it? Put us out of some misery.
Okay, so Bond is on a table, and there's a laser.
Okay, yeah.
There's a laser. There's a laser, and of course, the laser's heading up to his middle.
Wallet.
Anyway, Connery says, and he's tired. He goes, "Good night, Miss Bond." He goes, do you expect me to talk, girlfriend? He goes, no, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Yeah. Which is,
and it's the funny thing is but what's wonderful about that is the actual thing is that it's actually one of the big cliffhangers of the series itself. It's such a wonderful moment because Bond is actually like this, and you think, how is he going to get out there? And of course, he uses a bit of mind game. He goes, Grand Slam, he goes, you do want to take that chance? And then, of course, he gets shot with a dart gun and he ends up on the plane. That's where he's pussy galore. So those are my top 5.
So I can't remember. So he's tied down. What happens?
He's tied down. So what it is the laser is coming towards him. And of course, and he says, he goes, a couple of words you heard. He goes, do you want to take that chance? And then he turns the laser off and goes, you are right, Mr. Bond. You are useful to me alive. And then they put a bullet in him and then he wakes up on a plane. So that's it. So we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to talk money now. And I'm going to sort of throw this out there. Who do you think is we're going to look at the 6 James Bonds that have played. Who do you think is the most successful financially?
Is this adjusted for inflation?
Yeah. I was doing a bit of research before I came, and I'm just going to go. This is approximations in dollars of who is the most successful Bond. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of throw this out there. And I want you to name the top 3 in ascending order. Just as an idea. Just give me. What I'll do is look at the 6 James Bonds you got, and just make a wild guess as what you think the top 3 are.
Is it going to follow that they're all modern? The modern ones.
Well, it's Bond itself. So if you think about it, based on the fact that they've done, probably all I'll say is think of the ones that've done multiple Bonds. Don't think, okay, I'm going to take two out, Lazenby and Dalton, because they only did two. Lazenby did one, did two. Yeah. So out of the four, I will I'm going to sort of tell you, I'll sort of just have a go and just see what you think.
It's starting 1, 2, 3. I'm going to say Daniel Craig, Sean Connery. Those Sean Connery films made a ton of money at the time.
But remember, but bear in mind, take into account the success of the later ones as well. So the varying factors are, if you take into account the success at the box office, remember, even with inflated adjusted dollars, well, it's actually quite significant. I mean, you'll be quite surprised to find out actually who is actually the top three moneymakers. So just have a think about it and just make a prediction. I'm 10 bonus points to get. Don't worry if you're wrong. I'm just sort of throwing it out there for you.
Okay, yeah, that's just a guess because Daniel Craig, just because I think that they're modern ones. Yeah. There's a lot of hype and every film seems to be the biggest film ever making $1 billion. So it's a big blockbusters make an awful lot.
So it's definitely Roger Moore, Sean Connery, and blah blah blah. What's it?
Well, no, I think what's his name? Who's the Irish chap? What's his blooming name?
Okay, so what have you put as number one?
Daniel Craig.
Okay.
Who's the Irish chap?
Pierce Brosnan.
Pierce Brosnan.
Oh,
right.
Based
on his name.
So
I'm gonna put Sean Connery number. Well, I'm gonna put Pierce Brosnan 2 and then Sean Connery.
Well, I'll give you full marks, 2 out of 3. But here, this is the actual going from top to bottom. So the in last place, it's George Lazenby with 82 million, which is pretty good for one Bond. Okay. Timothy Dalton actually, made his films made a total worldwide of 347 million. The biggest surprise is that Connery only made 632 million.
He did a lot as well.
He did a lot as well. Roger Moore is third with 1.1 billion. Pierce Brosnan is second with 1.4 billion. And you are absolutely right. Daniel Craig is top with 3.9.
I would have thought Pierce Brosnan would be up there. I would have thought he'd been up there.
Okay. So here's another one to go for. So this is another test for you. So this is the top 5 inflation-adjusted Bonds of all time. So I'm going to throw that out there, and I'll say there are 5 movies. But also remember, right, this is the other thing to bear in mind. Although Daniel Craig is the most successful Bond of all time, you've got to think in terms of inflation adjusted. So think back 60 years and look at the Bond movies that you might think of there. So there are 5 titles, and I'm going to throw that out there, and I will give you 10 bonus points if you can name the top 3.
Top 3. I think Dr. No is up there.
Yeah, it's going to be the classic.
Because I think Dr. No, as I said, I do think Dr. No was a massive hit at the time. That's what spawned. They suddenly thought, oh, right, we need to make sequels of this. And then they were successful. And then that sort of kicked the whole thing off. So I can say Dr. No is probably up there.
Majesty's Service has got to be, that's pretty well known, but I don't know if it's just...
As you're saying, I think for inflation, it's a single film for inflation. That's 87 million back then. Crazy numbers back then.
Was there a wild card one that made a load of money that wasn't?
GoldenEye.
GoldenEye, yeah. I expect that to be the one.
Because that was the sort of return. He'd been away for a few years.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because there'd been a break. Yeah. And then...
Well, the whole reason about that was that the problem is I think I've touched on it in the previous podcast, is the fact that there was a major legal battle between Broccoli and MGM. So Giancarlo Peretti was the owner of MGM at the time, and what he was trying to do is he was trying to sell off to fund his own problems. He was going to use the Bond library as a way of financing his own sale of MGM. So Broccoli said, "Can't do that. This is my property. Can't do that." So for about 5 years, there was actually a thing, and they didn't start thinking about new Bond until 1994. Timothy Dalton was actually scheduled to do a third Bond, but then because of the legal things, it was too long, and he said, "I can't do this anymore." So that was what happened. Okay, so I've got the 5 titles down. So I will give you 10 bonus points if you can name the top 3.
Top 3. I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm
all
go
the main ones.
Dr. No, GoldenEye, and Casino Royale.
Okay.
Go on. What is that?
Well, it's quite surprising. You'll be quite surprised. This is the inflation adjust. This is what I've worked on the Bond dossier. This is what it's done. So at number 5, it's Live and Let Die with 1 billion. Okay. Number 4 is Spectre with 1 billion.
Oh.
Number 3 is Goldfinger with 1.1 billion. Number 2, up until recently, was the most successful one. It was Thunderball with 1.2 billion. And the most successful Bond film of all time in terms of inflation-adjusted dollars is Skyfall with 1.3 billion.
Really?
Yeah. So just going back, to what I did before, because I talked about pre-credits, this is actually my top 5 title sequences. So we are going back to it. Okay?
So interesting enough, because I was sort of going for the first ones. I was operating under diminishing returns there.
Yeah.
And it seems interesting that the sequels are making more money.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's I think since when Brosnan took over, this is the other thing, is the irony of it is Craig was probably the least liked choice as Bond when he came out, and yet he's become the most successful. So the thing is whoever takes over with Aaron, say if Aaron Taylor Johnson's going to take over, I think it'll be interesting to see what they do with it, because of what happened in No Time to Die. Because the fate of 3 key characters was decided in No Time to Die, probably because they wanted to complete Craig's arc. But I did feel it was a bit selfish, because I think it was a shock. I mean, I'm still slightly recovering from No Time to Die in terms of what it is, because it is although that's it, I think Rami Malek was fine. And I did I think Leah Seydoux was really good in it as well.
It was trying to do something a bit different, and it was interesting that it went there, and it sort of had a full stop.
Yeah.
To it,
So my final bits for this podcast, we're finally there. These are I'm going to love you and leave you with my favorite title sequences. So at number 5, we're going to go for Dr. No, because it actually the reason I pick it is because I love the opening scene with the lines and stuff, and then it cuts into these silhouetted women, and then it cuts to 3 blind mice, and the 3 black guys in Jamaica who kill strange ways. They sort of turn up and stuff like that. So the style of it is actually, it sort of sets up the style of these pre-credits, these title sequences. And number 4, I'm going to pick Diamonds Are Forever, because I like the Diamonds Are Forever and the
it's one of the most silhouette-y lady ones.
Yeah. And number 3, I did talk about it earlier, the Casino Royale card style thing with all the roulette wheels and stuff. And number 2, I'm going for Live and Let Die, which is the voodoo one, which is with the skull and stuff. The actual and the music is, and it's also the music and the actual.
What do you like about it so much?
It's the fusion of the music, but it's also the visuals. I mean, when it goes when they have there's a voodoo witch woman, and then it sort of cuts from her face to her with the eyes, and then it cuts to a burning skull.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of cool with a sort of rocking soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's kind of
And I mean my favorite pre-credit sequence, and actually I have to say this: You Only Live Twice was the first Bond movie I ever saw on TV. They did an ITV screening on a Sunday, and I remember it was that was the first time I ever saw a Bond movie on TV. Moonraker was the first film I saw on the big screen. Oh. But yeah, so. Again, I like my favorite shot in there is that as the credits end, it actually shows a silhouette of the mountain, and then it fades in, and it dissolves to actually the Hong Kong harbor. And I love that thing. And I like the Japanese, the geisha girls and stuff like that, and the fusion. So that to me is my sequence. I mean, of course, disclaimer to anybody listening out there: you have your own choices, you have your own preferred, you probably have your favorite bongo, you have your favorite Bond villain. So all I say is I'm happy to disagree with you, and I'm happy to embrace what your chances are. So thank you very much.
And happy anniversary.
And happy 60th anniversary. And let's look forward to what the next Bond is. I mean, there'll be an official announcement in March of 2023. They haven't quite decided, although the rumor has it they've already shot the gun barrel thing from there. So I guess we'll find out soon anyway.
That'll probably be the teaser, won't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I suspect they'll do a teaser trailer before they've got the film locked in of just who it is.
What's your favourite three sort of brands of film? You got Bonds. You got
my favourite three brands of film. Are you talking franchises?
Yeah, franchises. Yeah. Because you're very Bond heavy.
I would safely say Bond is one of them.
Yeah.
I think also as well, it's the most consistent. I mean, funny enough, when I see, the strange thing is there are movies that I've actually seen over the years where they've actually changed, my perception has changed. So for example, I'll give you a couple of examples. Octopussy was a movie I didn't particularly go for when it first came out. So I was a bit disappointed. But the funny thing is when I watch it now in the context of the later ones, it actually is not a bad movie and I quite like it. Although that said, I think the circus scene where the bomb's about to go off, but they have this sequence at the palace in India and stuff. Although it happens to be probably, it's a very un-PC film now because it's like, because there's a scene where Vijay Amritraj, who was a tennis player, and he actually plays one of Bond's sidekicks. And there's a very funny exchange where he goes, I actually play tennis myself. And Roger Moore goes, what have you learned? He goes, well, my backhand's improved. But I like but the thing is, there's a scene where they go to, Shadrujin, who's the station eye, for example. He goes, oh, please be careful. So, of course, in the early sequence, he actually sort of wins 200,000 rupees at the restaurant. And of course, he gets it cash. And then, of course, he turns to this Sadra and he goes, "Oh, this will keep you in curry for a week." It's not exactly a very subtle thing. But I think Roger Moore does get away with it in that respect anyway. So that, Octopus, I mean, Man with the Golden Gun, I think is a fantastic Bond movie now, because also it's got probably one of the best stunts, which is the 360-degree flip over the bridge, which they did.
Oh, yes.
So the franchises.
Yes, back to franchise.
The three franchises. Bond.
I would say, I think the Star Trek franchise movies are really good. I like those. I think for me, Star Trek the motion picture I have a soft spot for, because when I first saw it in 1980, everybody said, "Oh, you're going to fall asleep with this." But I was really intrigued by the idea of a space probe becoming.
It's great. I mean, really, really good. Those first one.
But the thing is, I like the intriguing idea of a space probe from Earth actually becoming a living, breathing being, and it actually.
Vija.
Oh yeah.
Vija. So
hang on. So you saying Star Wars and Star Trek?
I'd say Star Wars, Star Trek. And I would also say Lethal Weapon, the four Lethal Weapon films, because I think the great thing is the consistency of those things. And for me, it's a movie from 1987 to 92. It's 5 years of glorious action. And
this is the trouble is most franchises now have been ruined by later things, because I'm thinking.
Oh, actually, interrupt you. I think Mission Impossible. I would actually put Bond. I put Bond, Star Wars, and Mission Impossible. Star Wars, Star Trek, and Mission Impossible. So there's four. Because I think the way that, having seen, I don't know if have you seen the new trailer for The Dead Reckoning?
The new one.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen the new one.
Watch. There's they've released a trailer for it's Dead Reckoning Part 1 and 2, and they've kind of gone down the No Time to Die route. But the great thing is when you watch it, it is really bang for your buck, and it's got an incredible, the very climactic shot in the film is actually of this incredible bike leap from, where Tom Cruise is, and and it's like the, it encompasses a lot of the characters, like Henry Czerny from the very first one, Kittredge, the one in the, the aquarium.
Oh, yeah.
He's actually back in there, and he's actually sort of being very slimy and villainous again. So,
right. So I got some Bond questions. Right. They've all got a mission. Bonds versus Bond. Who wins?
Bond versus Bond.
Okay.
Is it just Daniel Craig?
So, are you talking in terms of?
They've all got a mission to complete. Go.
I pitched this as a film. I think that when the technology becomes better, they will have all the Bonds in together, and they'll all.
Who did you come up with? The algorithm bring up?
Who wins out of a fight?
Well, not a fight. They've all got a mission to complete. They might end up fighting in the end, but
I think Connery and Bond, because they're military people and stuff like that. I think Craig probably would be the physical side. I think
is one smarter than the rest? You see what I mean? Daniel Craig will just get there quicker.
I still
peak. I mean,
the other one's all smoking cigarettes.
I would probably go for Connery.
Oh, right. Why?
For the simple, because I think he has the charm and he has the combination of physicality. When you look at him in things like Thunderball and Goldfinger and like I think From Russia with Love, I think that was the most physical element of it that I like. So
I'd see Roger Moore getting there last. He's more lethargic. Your
Zimmer,
humour only gets you so far.
In his Zimmer frame.
What do you come up with?
Who would win? Have a fight between them all?
Well, who would complete the mission first?
Oh, who would complete the mission?
Maybe
first?
a fist fight at the end.
Sean's
got it all.
Sean Connery is the
right. Who was Bond's toughest opponent? Who was the one that gave him who he would least like to fight again?
I would probably go for Frank Sanchez in License to Kill.
And for what reason?
Because because when there's a rock crush, there's a rock crusher in this plant where they, with the heroin, the cocaine, the heroin, and actually he's literally hanging over it, with nothing more than his boots, stuff like that, and he's actually hanging on like that, and actually Sanchez is actually going to kill him like that. But also as well, the way that Sanchez deals with Milton Crest in that, with the exploding in the pressure cooker, the exploding thing. There's a scene basically where Bond has sort of taken this money from Milton Crest, which is drug money, and he actually sort of uses it to infiltrate the thing. But what he does is he actually puts all the money back into the into this pressure, the decompression chamber, and then he opens it up and he goes, "That's not my money." He goes, "No, you're right, that's mine." And then he goes, "You want it so much?" He throws it in there, and of course, and then of course the head explodes and there's blood over the couch, and then the tension goes, "Sanchez, what do we do with money?" He goes, "Launder it."
Right, out of all the henchmen, who wins? So you've got Oddjob, you've got Jaws.
I would say
hand-to-hand combat.
I think it's a cross between Oddjob and Jaws.
Yeah, it's going to come
because
down.
I think Jaws would. Well, the thing about it is Jaws has the teeth.
Yeah.
But Oddjob has the balls.
Right, and the last one. So, out of all the females in them, can you remember the countries they've come from? The various countries.
Okay, so
I don't know anything, but Russia, I'm assuming, comes in.
Okay, so Honey Rider, I think, is Jamaica.
Oh yeah.
Tatiana Romanova is Russian.
Yeah.
Pussy Galore is British.
Oh yeah.
Claudine Auger is French. You Only Live Twice is Aki is Japanese. Jill St. John is American. Tiffany Case.
What film was the American?
Tiffany Case. That's You Only Live Twice. So, so You Only Live Twice. Aki is Japanese. Jill St. John, Tiffany Case is American. Solitaire is British. Jane Seymour. Mary Goodnight, Britt Eklund, Swedish.
Oh yeah, would have thought about it. Yeah.
No, I'm trying to think. No, that she's
the light's getting dimmer.
She's also in Man with the Golden Gun.
Right, give us one more.
And Anya Amasova, Barbara Bach is Russian.
Oh, give you an A there, John. Well done, mate. You got an A. And on that sagacious note, we will end there.
That's very impressive.
Well done, John. We will see you next time.
Here's your story. Let's begin. The water's fine. Come on, dive in. The future's here. It's right before your eyes. Step by step, you're on your way. Welcome to a brighter day. Don't you know it feels good to be alive? You could be larger